I was widowed in 2015 and ended up getting in a second marriage that was really toxic and was shocking to me what happened. Here I thought as a psychologist, I knew a lot about illness and dysfunction and relationships, and then to find myself a victim of abuse. So when I got out of it, to make sense of it, I wrote the story Love You More, trying to partly just to put it into a perspective and understand what happened and why it happened. But as I was doing that, then I began to connect with people on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube around their stories, and discovered that there's a lot of us who experience this type of dysfunctional, harmful relationship. So it's just been an incredible journey of my own of discovery and making sense, but also really finding out that I'm part of a community that's experiencing this as well.
So many people that are in our profession, you'd like to think, well, the reason I'm in the profession is because I perfected this whole thing and I've got it all figured out. Well, sure enough, we are trying to figure it out, but I know I consider myself to be a fellow sojourner, and clearly you consider yourself to be that. And if you can put an arm of encouragement around other individuals as you talk about what you've learned, then all the better. And so that's what I'm hearing you say. Been there, done that. Now let's talk about how we can learn from this.
Yeah, exactly. I think that what is not understood about narcissistic abuse, which makes it different from other forms of abuse, is that there is a deception, and that we think we've met a real person and we haven't. We've met a facade or a persona. And so we begin to build a relationship on that foundation, thinking this is something authentic, not realizing that we're being manipulated and exploited. And you're right, there is a lot of us that this is happening to, and it's very harmful. And it's helpful to be able to share our stories so that we know we're not alone, but it also helps to validate our experience, to know that we're not crazy or something's wrong with us for that happening. And you're right, as a psychologist, it was very humbling for me to have that happen, and very embarrassing. But if I'm feeling that way, then I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. So for me to share my story took a lot of courage for me. It was very, very difficult, but I kept thinking, this is going to help others, because if they can see themselves, is that even a psychologist can't prevent this from happening, maybe they can help find more grace and forgiveness for themselves for it happening to them.
Oh, and your words resonate so strongly. And again, I just appreciate where you're coming from. Now, we're talking about people who have toxicity. And one of the things that I so emphasize is we can't allow that person to set our pace. So if you've had exposure to that toxic individual, but you're wanting to move towards a more safe manner of life, what kind of priorities or adjustments would be necessary for an individual to get to that place?
Well, it depends who the toxic person is. I mean, if it's a partner, that's really tough, because anytime you engage in conflict or anything that's controversial, they're antagonistic by nature. So it's going to be challenging. They're not going to want to look for resolution and closure. So I would really then guard people to become more self-protective and careful in those relationships, maybe, and consider the wisdom of being in the relationship. If it's a family member or a coworker or a neighbor or something, then we have to figure out ways to get along hospitably without really risking a lot of ourselves or our hearts with these individuals. But it's tricky. It's really tricky.
Yeah, and I consider it to be so necessary for each of us, especially when we have these people in our life, to have a well-conceived definition about
Yeah.
who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And then if that other person is in a bad mood, like you say, they're argumentative and all like that, I'm thinking, wait a minute, argumentative is not on my list of preferred ingredients. I don't feel the need to match pitch with you.
Hmm.
And it's easier said than done, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
because they're so good at hooking you. I mean, they
yeah.
know they're antagonistic by nature, and they know how to create drama antagonism with you, to start arguments with you. So you have to really watch out for that you have a good sense of that and a separation from it, that you know how to withdraw. I often urge people to plan out interactions, like figure out what you want to say, practice it so that you're
Yeah.
ready, so that when it happens, you can then say that.
I refer to that just rehearsing in advance.
Hmm.
If you have a family gathering and you have that uncle over there who's always criticizing and sometimes tries to goad you, it's like, okay, when I'm around Uncle Joe over there, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? And exactly, because you can't predict everything, but you know some of the trends and patterns that might be there, and you can kind of think, okay, when that shows up, who am I going to be?
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, what we're saying basically is there are some individuals who just simply don't get it. And then not only that, they feel no need to go get it. But instead, it's like, no, I'm pretty much the standard bearer here. So if there's a problem here, it must be you. And people like yourself and like me, our task is to say, well, wait a minute, let's get ourselves educated on this. There's something dreadfully inappropriate going on here. Knowledge is power, and as we're able to become knowledgeable about this, then we're able to move forward in a healing way.
Exactly. Gives us more choices. I mean, if you understand the dynamics, then you have more options yourself of what you're going to do the next time. I absolutely agree.